everyone had that one good slide you took like 6 years ago before you got married? That's mine right there for the intros. I'm not going to take a new one to update it because I'm not going to get my hair cut that straight ever again. I do it myself now. But yes, my name is Sam Valme. I'm the North America Engineering Manager, Solution Engineering Manager for Apppoint Public Sector. We're based out of Courthouse, so 14 minutes ago is not that bad. I flew down to Atlanta one time for a 30-minute presentation and got 8 by the time we were good to go, so I'm good under pressure. But what we're going to be talking about today is kind of the other half. Vishwash mentioned on his slide deck that Azure is a major part of this journey to the cloud, but when it comes to making sure that your content, where people are actually working on a day-to-day basis, is good to go, we are one of the partners in the industry that are actually able to help you out there. So just a bit, by raise of hands, how many folks interface with Office 365, whether it's as a user, whether it's as a customer, whether it's as a partner? I'm hoping it's everybody. Perfect. Got some customers here if they didn't raise their hands. Microsoft, wherever you guys went. Next question. How many folks have actually heard of Apppoint? I can skip the intro. See, I just saved 5 minutes right there, y'all. There you go. So this is just a bit about us. We've been around since 2001, 16,000 plus customers. If you haven't heard about us, we have a website that does a great job going over in more detail. But what I do want to focus on is really here, where we focus, and that is being what we like to call ourselves the Microsoft expert across these 3 different focus areas. That's migrating, managing, and protecting your content into Office 365 in the cloud. So you actually raised a valid question. What happens when my end users or us as consultants don't have the knowledge really to get there? Well, we're one of the trusted partners from Microsoft to be able to assist you all with making that transition. So what we're going to talk about today is really going to be our internal methodology for actually moving our customers across into Office 365 in the cloud to make sure you have a complete solution for your customers outside of even just Azure by itself. So these are just some of our stats. Everyone likes a scoreboard. If anybody's into sports, the Golden State Warriors are coming tomorrow night. They got some good stats too. But ours are comparable. We have about 300 terabytes. It's about our largest project. A total of 8 petabytes migrated to the cloud. My current body count's around 147 terabytes of projects I've personally been a part of, being cross-commercial and our public sector customers. So a lot of experience internally. We're also across 5 different continents, so we do this internationally as well, so we have a lot of experience as we're going through. So not to just say that, you know, we're a big company, yada, yada, but the point is that we've done this a lot, and we've been the ones that get to sit across from, you know, Department X and working with the users, really figuring out what is relevant to move, how do we actually work with the different business units, and how do we make your migration successful. So that's what we're going to be accomplishing and as we're going through. If you don't, by the way, have it, an internal marketing team makes this slide deck just look beautiful, doesn't it? So here is, you know, really the focus of our migration methodology. And really, all the stuff at the top is great, but the bottom is the most important part, in my humble opinion, is reducing costs and increasing productivity. When it comes to your migrations, you know, into the cloud and Office 365, the lift and shift method, if you're talking about applications and products, absolutely that makes sense, absolutely that works. When you're talking about where the users actually work day to day, the internal content, a lot of the times when we're working with customers, we notice there is a massive opportunity to actually reduce the cost and timeline of an overall migration if you have the knowledge and insight to look into the content prior to actually moving it over. A lot of the information you can either leave on-prem, delete entirely, and also there intends to be inherent risk if you choose to migrate everything over if you don't actually have a compliant way of looking at everything and an actual methodology behind it. So Apppoint does, being an ISV, have tool sets to assist with these, so I'm going to mention one free one because everyone likes free stuff. You do need to give us an email though to get it, so there's always a catch it there, give or take. But every single time I look at this slide, anybody see Narcos? I imagine, like, you see the very first episode of Narcos, you see Pablo, like, walking across all those DVD players, like, what's in the back of the truck? He's like, nothing. That's kind of how a lot of your users treat migrations, right? It's like, what do you want to migrate? Everything. Why? Oh, it's all important. I need all this stuff. Let's bring it all over. When in reality, when we actually look at it and we have the tools to actually interface with the content, we discover a lot of the information hasn't been touched in 17 years, Steve. Steve is the guy we always rag on because he makes the worst decisions in meetings. So Steve, like, why do you need this information from 6 years ago? Why do you need this information that hasn't been touched in X, Y, and Z? And a lot of the times when you have just inter-office relationships working, it tends to kind of be like that episode on Narcos where Pablo's like, I need all of it. Why? Well, because I know where your family lives. It's like, why do you got to go there, man? A lot of the times when you're working with coworkers and these migration projects, it kind of feels a little hostile sometimes because they're like, I need everything. And you're just the IT guy and you don't really have a lot of data or information to kind of prove to them why it might not be relevant. So we help you all provide the tools to our partners, to our customers, be able to ease those conversations. And of course, we also have a small services arm where we can kind of come in and strong arm anybody you need to, namely Steve, to kind of get his information across. So let's get a bit into kind of how we approach this, but really why. So when it comes to identifying information and data, this is kind of where you start with what you use, right? So we internally just finished our migration to Office 365 and some Azure apps as well. And we found that when we did our scan with our compliance tools, only about 17% of the information we had in our SharePoint and Office 365 environment had been touched in the past year, like modified, which is crazy to think about, right? But you also have some information that you need to keep, records, legal, accounting, whatever the case is, too. You want to be able to understand what that information is and make sure it stays in place, right? But in reality, this is all the stuff Steve wants to bring over, everything else, right? But it might just not be him. It might be a user, absolutely. You know, I need to go ahead and move this information over, along with the fact they might have their own complaints about the current platform, like, I don't know where information is, I actually don't use SharePoint, it's just a dumping ground for content. And then you also might have the concerns of the IT admins as well and some of the compliance officers, that when you actually have information that you do not have insight to, you actually bring that risk into the environment because you don't know if you're now this new green landscape, tampering it with potentially non-compliant information. If you don't execute your migration up front with a high level of visibility of your content, okay? So let's get into some of the pieces that we'd like to bring. So this is our overall methodology, right? It's a 4-phase approach that we use when we're working with our customers in various levels of depth. And on the right-hand side, there's a lot of cool text that I'm not going to read word for word. But the idea is that we do an initial discovery. We then work with our customers with their IA and governance planning. Step number 2 is the part that requires people. And I know for the technology people out there, we don't like to say the P word, but we have to work with people to really make sure that everything that we're moving across the wire is actually useful. So we got to get out of our cave. I used to work in the back office for a long time, but I promise I'm up here speaking out. I can do it, you can do it, right? We got to talk to the business to figure out what they actually need. And as consultants, we definitely assist our customers with that piece. And then, of course, the pilot migration and the migration execution. I'm going to get a lot more into pilot migration, but that is really where the rubber hits the road, and it's not as simple as just piloting all the content. I'll talk with you actually how we approach that as well, right? So let's start off with phase 1 when it comes to discovery, assessment, and planning. The focus of this talk is really making sure you have a compliant migration to the cloud. So Azure has a lot of cool tools to be able to make sure that when it comes to the infrastructure compliance, things are good to go, whether it means going through your ATO process, making sure your ISO certifications are satisfied, all that great stuff. But what about the content, right? You want to make sure that when you're going in, you understand where you have HIPAA and PII information across the environment. You want to understand where you have legal records that need to be maintained across the environment. This is an exercise that you have to do. And by all means, could you go through and do that lift and shift method, but once again, that's the easiest route, but you also ended up, once again, tampering potentially the destination environment. So it's where we always recommend our customers begin this journey. And how we help our customers with that is by giving them insight. So this is one of our free discovery tools. You can go to apppoint.com/discovery. Maybe if that doesn't work, get an error, just Google AvePoint Discovery to show up there. And you can actually download this, and what it'll actually do is scan your legacy ECM platforms, whether it's SharePoint, Lotus Notes, LiveLink, whatever the case might be, and actually give you an Excel breakdown. And we also have a Power BI template you can overlay too. So you're able to quickly and easily see, hey, across this entire section of your environment, you actually have information you haven't touched in X number of years. You have a lot of illegal file types. If you try to move over into the cloud, are not going to be available, and you're going to run into issues there as well. So this is kind of that shield when you're talking to Steve and saying, hey, bud, if you can bring it all over, but you're going to cause yourself and a lot of folks problems on the destination side, and you're also going to have some issues when it comes to actually finding this content as well. Right? In addition to being able to do these kind of scans just for the content and the file types, we also have the ability to do what's called our compliance scanning. This is where we're able to dig a level deeper into that content and being able to see within it, do I have social security numbers? Do I have physical addresses? Do I have IP addresses within my environment that I didn't know about? quick story about a 3-letter agency that I cannot name due to NDA reasons. We were doing a migration project for them on the front page of their homepage in Internet and SharePoint. We noticed 57 hits for PII. Looked at the document, it was an Excel document, and it said company outing. Didn't really say that, it said something else. But it was for a trip where everybody in the office actually go out. And we said, that's kind of interesting. There doesn't seem to be anything here. We looked at our report and it said, hey, there's actually a secondary sheet that's hidden. We looked at it, and what happened was the admin for that office happened to go ahead and just take something off the operations site without looking at it, just saw it had everyone's name to assign them out activities for this project. Turns out it actually had all their PII, their social security numbers, their addresses on this document. They copy and pasted that, put it right on the home page. Now the sheet was hidden, so they didn't see it, but our tool was able to actually discover that and prevent potentially a really big problem for somebody. It's probably Steve, right? So this is where really starting when we talk about our compliance piece, is making sure that you have this level of insight to begin prior to starting your migrations. Okay? So phase number 2, information architecture and governance planning. So there is no shortage of customers that we talk to that say governance is their #1 priority. Show of hands. How many of you have talked to a customer that has a bulletproof governance plan? Bonus question. How many times do you talk to customers and they actually know what a governance plan is? Good. Have any of you ever seen a governance plan? He's shaking his head no. Cool, we got some for you. So what we do is we work with our customers by giving them frameworks to help them understand at a high level how to get started with this conversation of planning governance. And of course we have tool sets to help automate this as well. But it's really giving them insight as to what do other like organizations do in these kind of scenarios. DoD is famous for, I don't care who did it before, unless they're in the DoD, it doesn't matter, because we're special like that. In a lot of cases they are. So by being able to give them past examples, naming no names, but how things have been structured in different organizations, really makes it easy, right, to be able to begin. And that's one of the things, not only with governance planning, but also information architecture. This is a bit more specific and once again requires that people word. You have to be able to talk to folks to figure out what your business processes are to really be able to hit with that IA. And by doing this prior, notice we haven't even started moving bits and bytes yet. By doing this prior to the migration, you ensure that when we get to the destination, it's actually useful and it's no longer just a repository for files. So these are critical parts of a migration. Once you have the discovery of the content, making sure the foundation on the destination side is done prior to. I know a lot of folks are looking at me like, man, Sam, that's a lot of work. It is, because it requires people. If we can have a software update, Microsoft, y'all on the back, if you can give us a software update that eliminates the people from these projects, like, amazing, right? We could all, our jobs would be so much easier if that would happen, right? Because, you know, they kind of make things a little bit different, but it's okay. So this is kind of where things start to get awry. Right now we're actually putting rubber to the road and getting things started. So this is where we begin our pilot migration. So like I said, we're moving content, we're moving terabytes of information. It is completely impractical to think that you are going to be able to do a pilot migration of 2 terabytes of content for an organization in one fell swoop. Doesn't make sense, doesn't work, mostly because a lot of times moving that content is a bit difficult. But once again, you have to think it on a practical level. You have different business units and business groups who have to be able to test their information isolated and make sure they can work as a group. And then you have to move to the next group and the next group and the next group. So the way that we actually break these into is individual waves. The waves are clustered around different business units with like processes that work in like areas across the cloud. Right? So when we're talking about a test migration or pilot migration, what we're doing is we're moving over that segment, and out of 2 terabytes, it might be 50 gigs, it might be 100 gigs, which really focus on that business unit. We focus on them first, make sure they have access, and we take a small group of representative stakeholders and ask them to be the ones to kind of test the water. Does everything you normally do in a workday, is it here? Is it working? Does it operate? Does it look the way you expect it to look? Right? And then once we have that set, we can go ahead and move to the next unit. And then what we're going to do after we've done that initial test for one, we actually do the migration execution. So the way that it works is in a wave operation, right? So if you think about it, you have a test migration happen. They do a user acceptance testing. It's good. You do a full migration. The testing group moves out to the next business unit, and you continue this process until you make it all the way through the entire engagement. By breaking it up like this, you have a much higher success rate of doing this. And not only is this for testing of the migration content, it's also for discovery. So before we begin testing, we do a discovery for that business unit. We do that IA, architecture for that business unit, then move to the actual testing, then move to the full migration, and we keep this operating. So in a lot of times, we have 3 different workflows going with our customers simultaneously to expedite these migrations. Okay? So with that being said, here's really the benefit in doing this analysis and doing this compliance piece up front. It's when you actually look at the redundant, outdated, and trivial content, you notice quickly out of 40 terabytes, you're able to kind of go through and remove your duplicate data, and then you're actually able to do that data classification and go through and scan and figure out what's actually useful. The goal is to get to the last part on the far right, which is out of 40 terabytes, maybe we have just 4 that's actually useful for this organization. And by actually what seems like a lot of work by talking to people and guys like Steve, we're able to leave the business with a much cleaner environment and also reduce the cost of the overall project for our customers. I'm moving through in this methodology. Okay? I'm only 2 minutes over. I'm doing great. I got 3 more minutes, and then I'm out of your hair, I promise. So once again, kind of taking it back, reducing costs, increasing productivity by having a proven methodology. That's one of the things that AvePoint offers. The real thing is digital transformation for our customers. So when it comes to actually moving forward and getting folks off of the on-premise scenarios or getting them off of disparate technologies, that's really where we pride ourselves, is making the cloud the first place people think when they're deploying our new technologies. And small shameless plug, we're also doing a conference this summer called Digital Transformation. I mentioned Narcos earlier. We have the guy Steve Murphy, the actual DEA agent who help me out here, the main guy. Wow. Wow. Not at all. Pablo Escobar, thank you for playing the home game. Not the correct answer. Pablo Escobar, he's going to be speaking as well, talking about how even like the DEA had to go through this kind of transformation internally. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it was something to think about. I'll be here throughout the Q&A session. If you want to talk about guys like Steve, if you want more insight into our company and AvePoint. But thank you so much. Were there any questions before the transition? Damn, I'm good. All right. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for the time this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.